Hello and Happy New Year to you all. My name is Stephanie Lefurgy, and this is your December market update. Before we jump into December, I want to take you through the last quarter of 2024 and just recap a little bit of what we saw. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to keep getting market updates from me about the Okanagan. So let's touch on the last quarter of 2024 because this will also set us up to look into what we expect to happen in the spring, which is what I will touch on in the end, and how you can strategize your home buying process to maximize the benefit, whether you're a buyer or a seller. So stay tuned for that. When we look at the sales volume for 2024, we are actually still well below 2023. It was not a very good year for 2024. We're not at those historical lows from 2008 to 2014, but we're pretty close. We had about 3,000 less sales in 2024 than we did in 2023. However, that being said, and I will touch on this a bit later, December wasn't a bad month for the Okanagan. We had about 40% more sales than we did last year. If we look at the actual number of sales, we are below the 10-year average in 2024. Sellers really felt this. A lot of listings just sat on the market. What was it? Why did we see this decline in our market? I think a lot of people are still concerned about wildfires happening in the Okanagan due to climate change. So that could have also affected sales over the summer and over the year. However, those that know the Okanagan, it can get fires. You accept it. Just like Vancouver can be rainy, just like you have those miserable winter months in the summer, the Okanagan can get fires. It's a fact. Everyone that lives here knows that. However, the benefit is worth the risk because it's such an incredible place to live. Another thing that affected our sales in 2024 was these rising economic pressures, making vacations shorter for some and even deterring others from visiting altogether. And as we all know, life is not getting any less expensive. So I think people are just staying home, or maybe they're saving their money to go abroad rather than traveling locally. Now, to make matters worse, a significant decrease in short-term rentals due to some provincial legislation. Rental availability is not really a thing anymore. Airbnbs have to be in your primary residence. So a lot of Airbnbs shut down. You can't have an Airbnb in your carriage house either. It has to be connected to the house. So we're seeing a lot more homes with carriage houses on the market. Those are only allowed to be rented long term. And if you know anything about the rental rules and regulations, I think homeowners are wary about having long-term renters because a lot of the legislation is in their favor rather than the homeowner's favor. Now, I'm not saying that we should take away renters' rights. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm speaking the truth. It is not easy to evict a tenant these days. So going back to these short-term rentals and Airbnb, we saw a decline in tourism. Tourism is really important to the Okanagan real estate economy. And the reason that being is many visitors fall in love with the Okanagan. They fall in love with the area and they decide to purchase homes after experiencing its beauty and what life is like here. I actually just had a friend visiting from the island. We had an amazing time over the Christmas holidays at Silver Star Mountain, and she was just blown away by how family friendly the mountain was. And, she joked to her husband, we need to move here. And I think that happens all the time. So tourism is really important. And now with the decline in the Airbnbs, actually, even the BC Hotel Association has said Kelowna has seen a huge drop in people renting rooms. So our tourism was definitely down over 2024. And I think that really did affect the amount of sales and the housing market. So that drop in the number of visitors, combined with those restrictive policies like the short-term rental ban, rising real estate taxes, that's created more hurdles for the local housing market. The market, though, definitely favored buyers this summer. Like I said, those listings were sitting and sitting if they weren't priced correctly. Buyers, despite this, are still frustrated by the limited room of negotiation. Prices remain 40 to 60% higher than those pre-pandemic levels. They've maybe fallen about 10 to 15% from the record highs that we saw about 2 years ago. The sellers are holding firm. They are being stubborn. I can speak to this having several listings where a price reduction is necessary, but sellers, they need that revenue. They want their equity back, and they're not willing to drop their price. Let's dive into what December looked like and what we can look forward ahead to the spring. So as I mentioned previously, we saw 41% increase in units sold, both in the central Okanagan and the north Okanagan. There was a little bit less active listings. There's not as much inventory on the market. Let's take a look at townhouses. Townhouses also saw close to a 40% bump, a little bit of an increase in their benchmark price, and their days to sell went down, and we saw a little bit more inventory. Condos have been a tricky market. We have several listings that are just not budging. Despite us reducing the price, I feel as though condos could be a fantastic investment right now. You can get some really nice units at a great deal. The sales went up 53% compared to last year. So buyers are catching on and they are moving on the condos. And the prices went down. Sellers are realizing they have to be more competitive because there's so much inventory on the market. Days to sell has gone up and inventory has gone up as well. We have seen a bump in sales in December, and I would attribute that mostly to the interest rate cut that we saw. And as soon as that happened, we had so much more interest in our listings that have been on the market for quite a while. A lot of people writing offers. So December, we saw that increase, which was great for the market. And it's going to lead right into the spring. This graph shows that really nicely. 2024 is this green line. And you can see at the end of the graph, there's a very slight uptick, which is indicating that we saw an increase in sales. So I would say the main economic factor affecting sales in December was the rate cuts that happened. I do think with January just around the corner, I haven't heard much from the Bank of Canada what they're planning on doing. Some are saying they're holding. There could be another rate cut, but that would be quite aggressive. So I have a feeling they will hold and then skip a rate cut and then maybe move the next month. It's hard to say. Nobody has a crystal ball. But the rate cut definitely helped our December market. We saw an increase in sales, an increase in buyer activity for sure. Now, what about price trends? Where are prices sitting right now? Well, if we look at this graph, over the last 2 years, so if we're looking from 2023 to now, prices have remained fairly steady in between that 1.1 million mark. When we look at the days to sell, the increase is essentially the winter months. You can see that it drops significantly down in the spring and summer and jumps up in the winter. That's very common. Buyers are just not as active. There's not as many buyers looking in the winter months. Homes don't show as well in the winter. It's dark, it's dreary. Buyers aren't really touring as much. I would say the really serious buyers are the ones that are moving in the winter. Investors are looking in the winter, and that's why we see these dips. Interestingly enough, in October, we saw a drop in the days on market. We had quite a busy October, and I wanted to touch on that previously, but October was a great month for real estate. We saw a huge surge, and that again attributes to those rate cuts that happened in September. So as a buyer, as much as buyers want to wait for the rate cuts to happen, sometimes it's better to secure the home before the rate cuts happen because you can get your house at a better price. And why is that? Is because as soon as you see those rate cuts, you see that increase in demand and there's more buyer activity. And that drives the selling prices up because you're in a competing market. So right now is actually a great time to buy because there are still a lot of buyers sitting on the sidelines. And I think if there were several rate cuts to happen before the spring, we would definitely see more of a balanced market, perhaps even slowly inching into a seller's market. What about inventory? Let's look at inventory in the central Okanagan. This graph shows the absorption rate. So the absorption rate is essentially how many homes that are active on the market, how long it takes for those homes to disappear. When the absorption rate goes down, it's lower, it's more of a seller's market. Things are flying off the shelf, sellers have more of the power. When listings are sitting on the market and the absorption rate goes higher, it's more of a buyer's market. And you can see here we had that big drop again in October. After the rate cut, the absorption rate dropped down and prices also went up a bit, and the absorption rate, things were coming off the shelf a lot quicker. So this just goes to show again how rate cuts can really impact the market in not a lot of time. It happens quite quickly. I think what essentially happens is you can think of the rate cut as that trigger, and all of a sudden it just unleashes a bunch of buyers pulling the trigger because they just needed that go ahead with the rate cut. So if we do see a rate cut in January, get ready. I'm sure our absorption rate will come down and we'll have a busier February. Now, what are things actually selling for? Are they selling at list price? Are they selling above list price? Well, when I'm doing my current market analysis for listings, another thing that I look at is also tax assessment. I feel that many homes have been tax assessed high. And I also find that people are listing above tax assessment as well, often, or around tax assessment. But regardless, when we look at this graph, you can see that in 2024, the majority of homes that sold were selling well below the list price. And I think sellers are just slowly realizing that they need to be a bit more competitive, and also buyers are just not willing to pay a full price right now. This graph shows the sale activity comparing 2024, which is blue, and 2023, which is green. So we can see that bump in October that we definitely did not have in 2023, and that very slight uptick in December that we also didn't have in 2023. You can see there's a dip. And again, I know I'm really like a broken record right now, but I just want to drive that point home that rate cuts really do affect the market. Normally December is a very slow month. You know, people are doing all their holiday stuff, their Christmas stuff. Generally, it's hard to get a lawyer appointment around Christmas or do any like closing, bank drafts, all that kind of thing. So December typically is a quiet month in real estate, which you can see in 2023 it was. However, we saw quite an uptick this December compared to last year. What about the number of homes sold? So here, this goes to show we saw a drop in December, but generally with the upcoming months, you can see the most homes sold happened in the spring. So as a seller, get ready because I think the spring is going to be a very busy month. Generally, we see the most activity in the spring. However, we saw a lot of activity in October as well. Again, there were the rates cuts, and we saw a little bit more activity in December. January is very small because January just started. I've already covered this, but it's just nice to align graph how much percentage it's actually selling below list price. So in October, there was actually a bump in the sale to list price ratio because we had that buyer activity in October, and then it actually drove prices up a bit in November. It then dropped down again in December, and you can see it really drives up in March, April, May being the highest, which is typically where we see the most sales. So in those peak spring months, people want to get everything done and enjoy their summer. So the spring It's a great time to show houses. Daylight is longer, things are blooming. It just makes sense. Here is your top 20 neighborhoods in Kelowna. These neighborhoods saw the most amount of sales in the month of December. Glenmore in the lead, and then North Glenmore follows, Black Mountain and the Lower Mission, and then it jumps over to West Kelowna and Rutland North. So these are your top 6 neighborhoods that saw the most amount of action in December. So I always find this interesting because this can change month by month, but Glenmore won the gold medal for most amount of sales in the month of December. So what can we expect in the spring? This is a bit tricky because our Prime Minister is also resigning. And who knows how that is going to be affecting our government, our economy, and whatnot. I'm not going to share my personal opinion about this, but I have a smile on my face. Let's just put it that way. I guess I just did share my personal opinion. I think that we are going to have a very busy spring, especially since 2024 was so quiet. So many people have been sitting on the sidelines and they're waiting. The ones that have waited too long have lost on great deals because they thought, oh, it's not going to sell. And then, they miss out on opportunities. Here's my advice to you if you're a buyer and you're looking for some strategy to enter the spring. Start soon, start early. Contact your realtor and just start touring some homes to get an idea of what you like and what you don't like. I cannot stress this enough. I call these exploratory tours. And the reason I do this is because it gives me, your realtor, a really good feel as to what you like and what you don't like. And also, it gives you the confidence as well, once you go to write, that you've looked at enough houses and you've seen what's out there. And when you find something that you really like, you just know. Please do not do this though unless you are pre-approved for a mortgage, because there is no sense shopping for a home if you do not know your budget. So first get pre-approved, then have a consult with your realtor so that they can ask you all of the questions on what you like, what you don't like, and plan a tour of homes in your favorite neighborhoods. Now, if you are a seller getting ready for the spring, I would also meet with your realtor maybe a month or 2 early before you're planning to list, to discuss things like staging, repairs, how to fix lighting, perhaps some landscaping. There's lots of things that you can do that are very subtle that can increase the value of your home by even up to, $50,000 to $100,000. Things like just painting your front door or adding different lighting or lighting fixtures. We just were at a listing presentation and we basically gave them some staging and painting tips. We pull images off Pinterest and we all just discuss some. It's a very safe environment. There's no pushiness. People have to be obviously open to these ideas. So if you are open to it, then I would say meet with your realtor early so that you can work on preparing to list your home in the spring. So as a conclusion, December was a busier month than what anyone expected, and it was very welcome. We saw that increase in December that we've just been waiting for most of the year. So it's very encouraging for realtors and for buyers and sellers going into 2025. It's going to be a busy year is my prediction. So make sure you have your ducks in a row, that you're prepared and you're organized and you're working with someone that you trust and also knows what you want. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Stephanie Lefurgy. I'm with the Move Okanagan Group. I am a realtor and mortgage broker. Please like and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. I would love to hear what you liked, what you don't like in the comments, and can't wait to see you next time.